See, I'm currently in Korea right now, and the other day on the national television and on like the national radio or whatever, they were literally doing like a low birth rate crisis special program thing. They were basically these like programs to make to like basically encourage Korean people to, I guess, have more babies, and how the government is working towards that. See, but the thing is, motherhood is a scam. Motherhood is the biggest scam, like one of the biggest scams like of history. Now, let me get into this because I mean, in the past, yeah, in like our mothers, our like grandmothers era, they didn't really have a career choice. Like they didn't really have a choice. So like they were forced into motherhood. So first of all, like that was a scam. And like nowadays it's kind of a scam because motherhood was just like so expected of women, and like nobody really told women, and like nobody really gave like little girls a proper education of what can actually happen when you become a mother, when you become pregnant, and you know, basically when you decide to participate in like this reproductive thing. The government would push, and by the way, this is not just about the Korean government, but the society and like the government would expect you to become a mother and just push out babies, but there is no proper education on motherhood and pregnancies for women. Like nobody tells you at schools, or like, you know, the society doesn't really tell you as a woman what will happen to you psychologically and medically when you decide to become pregnant. Or well, you don't really decide to become pregnant sometimes, but that's another story. And nobody really tells you what will happen to you psychologically and what will happen to your body. Like nobody told me until like I found it on the internet that they literally just cut your perineum, I think, open, and then just like stitch you up when you have a natural birth. And nobody also told me that you will basically be on your period for like a whole entire month after you give birth, because your uterus has to cleanse out like all this stuff that was in there because of the pregnancy. Like these are the things that the society doesn't tell you, but simultaneously they want you to have babies without telling you about it. So if this is not a scam, I don't know what is, because to me this concept sounds very, very scammy. Like it's giving like false advertisements with very, very fine prints that they don't tell you to read about. You know what I'm saying? It's very much giving like a scamish contract with a little teeny tiny clause saying, by the way, like this is like all the bad things that can happen to you. So like maybe start on that. Maybe start on like better educating and like how to, you know, deal with those things better, prepare a better government like infrastructure around that, you know, like instead of just, oh my gosh, please have more babies because we need more workers in the future so our economy would not collapse. Like sometimes things just feel so dystopian for a woman, and literally, mm-mm.
I'm going to say something that will make some people upset. I think we need to normalize regretting having your children. I'm a therapist and I work with kids, teens, young adults, as well as parents. And there are so many parents who have been vulnerable enough with me in their therapy sessions to admit that they regret having their children. Now, before you shame those parents, these are really, really good parents. Now, these aren't all parents that I work with. It's just a emotion that does come up in therapy that I don't think really gets talked about, because if they were to say some of these words out loud or to other people, they would get shamed for it. And don't get me wrong, these are amazing parents. They're great parents. They love their children. They would do anything for their children. They would never give their children up. But it's just talking about the emotion of regretting having them.
You were on the fence about having kids, but you ended up having kids. I want to know, stitch this.
Here's the quick backstory. I wanted kids. My wife did not. Before we got married, we had a conversation. I basically said I could be happy not having kids with you. And she said the reverse. If she was ever going to have kids, it would be with me. Great. We get married, 5 years go by. She's almost 40, which was the cutoff date that we decided. So we say, fuck it, let's try. And now here we are. We have an 18-month-old, and this is where we're at. All joy and no fun. It's the title of a book and a saying or whatever, and it very much encompasses the experience that we've had. We had a really rough first year, early pregnancy, complications, NICU, small baby, feeding problems. It was very stressful up until 13 or 14 months. And at this point, the difficulty of parenting shifted from the actual baby and keeping them alive, which we could do, to ourselves and us as a couple. And that has been so much more difficult than actually like parenting itself. The good news is it has gotten easier on all fronts every day, even just a little bit. And I can see a future in the next year or so in which fun comes back into our relationship and to our lives. And that's a hard selling point to tell someone, to tell you that you may not have very much fun for 3, maybe 4 years. And I know there are plenty of people that have kids and they love it and they would tell you the exact opposite, but that just hasn't been our experience. So would I do it again with the knowledge that I currently have? Yes and no. Here's the no. I still maintain that my wife and I could have a very fulfilling and full life without children, except you would need to completely erase all of the knowledge and the existence of this tiny human from my brain. If that could be done, then yes, I could do a child-free life. And the reason the no is obviously because we love this child, but also this experience has been way more impactful and different than anything else in my life. I can't even compare it. I had cancer when I was 19, and I had like a 50% chance of living, and that doesn't even come close to comparing how world-altering this experience has been. And now that I know, I don't want to unknow. I will say, we've asked this question of some of our friends who we feel like had similar outlooks about children, and pretty consistently, they have said something along the lines of, I started to love being a parent and I started to have a lot of fun at around the age 3 or 4. Again, I know, that's kind of a hard selling point. What I'm about to say is not helpful, but it sounds like you could have kids and the beginning part might be really hard and you would feel like you've lost a lot of yourself, but you'd get it back and ultimately you wouldn't regret your decision. And also, you could not have kids and you would have a great life and you wouldn't have any regrets. And I think both decisions are valid. There is a tiny, small, little silver lining to being on the fence if you decide to try and have kids, and that is that you are okay if it doesn't work out. And so the act of conceiving a child becomes so much less stressful. We have so many friends that desperately wanted kids or are trying to have kids, and they are struggling, and it is not a fun experience, and it's just stressful, and that sounds awful. So I guess there's that. I don't know. Good luck. You'll be okay either way.
What is something that you'll get a lot of hate for if you say it out loud?
That a lot of parents out there regret having kids. A lot of women have been sold on the idea that being a mother is everything, and that if you don't have kids, then what good are you? And then once they have kids, it's not all flowers and roses like they've been told. Nobody tells the truth about the real cost in having kids. Babies are born sick and they have ailments. Partners can't handle it and they bail. And then it's a great disappointment that the child grows up to be something totally different than the idea that you have in your head. And once the resentment sets in, they tend to lash out at people who chose not to have children. mostly out of jealousy because they have the freedom to do things while you still have a child attached to your hip. So if you're considering having kids, think long and hard, because having a child is a lifelong commitment. It doesn't end when the kid turns 18. It lasts a lifetime.
Couples break up after the baby. How is it that two people that liked and loved each other enough to the point where they were willing to have a child together all of a sudden fall out of love or grow apart once the baby comes? To me, there's a multitude of reasons why people can break up after the baby comes, but there's two main ones that stand out to me. The first reason, I've seen another lady speak on this already, is postpartum depression. Postpartum depression is a monster, and that girl that you fell in love with, that you decided to have children with, she's not going to be there for a minute. The only way you make it through that is just by being supportive to your wife, doing whatever she needs you to do. She's going through something that she can't even explain. Her body's going through so many changes, she doesn't even recognize herself. She's not being lazy. She's literally fighting for her sanity in her life during that moment. So you really just have to be supportive as the husband or the boyfriend. But what happens is a lot of men are just fucking selfish. They're not trying to understand what's going on with her. They're not being supportive. They're only concerned about their needs that aren't being met. So what do? They go out and cheat. And that's the beginning of the end of that relationship. The other way is just as common, and people don't even realize what's happening until it's too late. And that's just simply getting caught up in the rat race of life. Once you have children, your children become the center of your lives and everything revolves around them. And what happens in a lot of cases is you simply just forget about your partner. You don't spend any time with them. A lot of adults spend more time outside of their home with other people than they do with their own families. Most parents have a similar routine if they're working parents. You get up in the morning, you get ready for work, get the kids ready for school, y'all go off to work in school, you come home, you do whatever you have to do for the kids in the home, and then by the time all of that is done, it's time for bed. If you're not prioritizing at some point during that day time to spend with your partner, your spouse, your husband or wife, eventually the two of you will grow apart. We have to have the ability to take care of everything that we need to take care of for our children, all while still prioritizing our spouse. Because eventually you will start feeling like something is missing in the relationship and your partner is not providing it for you. And without you even realizing it, you're going to start seeking those things out in other people. You have to continue to actively date your partner once you have kids.
All right, go ahead, Luis.
Yeah, just I want to go back to what Hank talked about real quick before I comment on that. Hank, the problem is that most men today don't have any standards. Let's just be real. Most dudes today don't have any standards. We talk about standards and we talk about having non-negotiables and stuff like that, but most dudes out here do not stand 10 toes on their square. They don't adhere to the values in which they be spewing, and they just don't really stand on principle. You know, that's really the biggest issue. And you want to know why? Because most dudes spend way too much time trying to negotiate with women. Dudes spend way too much time trying to negotiate with women about certain things that they know that they can't hear. They're like, well, you know, maybe if you do this, and like, bro, just like Hank said earlier, if that's your standing and that's your non-negotiable, you got to stand on that. And most dudes don't have any standards because they spend so much time trying to negotiate with women as opposed to going through the thing that they want. But as far as the video is concerned, yeah, I agree with the brother. I thought he brought up a lot of great points. I think the aspect of the video that he kind of missed or left out was, you know, people don't really have these conversations about, you know, about having a child or, you know, or preparing for that, right? I think most people obviously would probably say that, you know, you can never be ready enough, but I think understanding like what that life is going to be like and how the support system is going to be there, especially for the woman, that's a conversation that's sometimes not really brought about. And I think that, you know, with these conversations constantly growing nowadays, I think more and more people who are in relationships need to talk about those things to avoid those types of calamities at the end. Hey, you.
I find it interesting, and I agree with him to an extent. However, we literally just, and I guess we did kind of just gloss over that last video with the young lady, but she admitted, openly admitted to sabotaging her relationship with her baby daddy, now husband, simply because she felt that she didn't see the value in a two-parent household. When a woman, and we all know this, when a woman has her mind set up on something, it don't matter, you can be the best man on the planet, but when a woman has her mind set up on something, there's not much that you can do to change that. It's the inevitable for whatever it is that she wants to happen. So yes, a man could continue to date, he could continue to do all of the right things. But if that woman feels a different way, if she feels that she's not getting or receiving what it is that she's expecting and not communicating it, then she's going to do the very thing that the woman just did, that she just talked about she did. So it is only so much that a man can do in a situation like that, unfortunately, especially if you're not married, because I'm assuming that she wasn't married to the man at that point. So but the whole logic of people having a baby together and breaking up when the baby, in the first 2 years of the child's birth, I think is absolutely insane. But it's extremely common because now it goes into the sadly the woman empowerment of you can do better, you can do bad by yourself, you can do this, you can do that, you can be all of these things in a dysfunctional house, broken house rather. I think that is unfortunate, but that's the
All right.
world we live in now.
All right. See if we get some of the ladies if they want to comment. Any of you guys want to chime in?
So I've been watching. Do y'all remember back in the day that program? What was it? 15 and Pregnant? Like years ago. It used to be out. So they got like a updated
I think it was 16.
Yeah,
Was it 16 and
16
pregnant?
and
I have 16
Pregnant,
and pregnant.
right?
yeah, it was on like
So they
MTV.
Yeah, yep. They have an updated version now that's called Unexpected. Still the same thing. And I just started watching the series again, like as a moment of like nostalgia, like, oh, I remember this back in the day. And it was just very interesting, kind of to speak to a little bit what Viz was saying about the other girl who said that she didn't like value, two-parent household. One of the things that I did see is the generational aspect of being young and pregnant, right? It was one couple on there who had 5 generations of being pregnant young, like around 15, 16. Um, and as I'm watching each episode, I was just seeing a pattern of things like that, being that young and being single, or just not having, growing up in a single household, dad not being there, things like that. Um, and on one of the episodes, it had spoke to that. Like I wanted to make sure that, I get married and have my son's father there. And the mom was just like, well, I just feel like you don't have to have a man there. And it just kind of shocked me because I'm like, okay, now I kind of get an idea of what the guys were saying about how, like, what single women keep women single. And I think that mindset around you could do it by yourself. You have me here, like that encouragement of, you can raise a child by yourself. I had noticed that as well.